Hello and welcome. This is Pepin from Pepin Reacts. And here, today, on this episode, we're going to be covering Breaking Bad, Season 2, Episode 12. My best friend here, Meader, he's going to react to me. Now, I have seen the series up to Season 2, Episode 6. I guess Season 2, Episode 12 at this point. I watched it like 10 years back, and I got too sad. That's where I quit, Season 2, Episode 6. Meader, he's seen the whole thing, but his memory is not the best. So this is a spoiler-free base reaction, meaning that you can watch along and we aren't going to spoil anything that happens later. Meader's not going to spoil me, and anything I know, any little spoilers I've caught on to, I won't say anything. So you can just watch along. Just be wary of the comments. Meader, say hello.
I'm here too.
That is amazing. Now, Meader, stop me if I go on a rant about toasters, okay?
Understood.
Now, last episode, this show did a lot of things, and I have a lot of predictions to what's going to happen here. Now, Meader, remind me what happened last episode, because it's been like a couple weeks. I think I know, but just refresh me.
Last episode, Walt and Jesse tried to sell all the meth that they made through a contact with that Saul had. And Jesse was also trying to get his relationship with Jane off the ground. And then they ended up doing drugs because somebody died and Jesse felt bad. Now Jane and Jesse are heavy into drugs, and Walt was able to somehow make the deal go through, and they're going to get, I think it's like $1.6 million if they sell all of the drugs right now. He broke into Jesse's home because Jesse was too high, took all the drugs. And the second that he's about to leave Jesse's house with all the drugs in a baggie, he got a text saying, here comes the baby. And he pretty much now has to choose between doing this $1.6 or $1.2 million drug deal or going to the birth of his daughter.
Yep. And it seemed like at the end there, he was definitely going to be going and doing the deal.
There's reason to believe that.
Yeah. So I think, after we watched that episode, and I can't collect all my thoughts here because I've had most of these like 2 weeks ago or something, but like I started putting a lot of stuff together. I think I had some of the basis here when we first watched it, but I have a lot of predictions here. So I'm just going to throw them out, and they're probably not going to be as succinct as I had them a little while ago, but I think definitely this guy, Gusto, or what's his name, Gus?
Yeah.
Gustavo something, but I'm pretty sure he is the one that was responsible for the death of Combine, or is it
Combo?
Combo. He was responsible for the death of Combo. I think that's certain here. I think he is related to these cartels, and I think that's going to interplay with the whole song they did, prior in the season about the cartels gaining vengeance or whatever. I think Walt has entered their turf, and Gus is fighting back here. And I also think that Gus is a bit worried and triggered because he essentially got exposed by Walt. He didn't plan for that. I think Gus was trying to probably get more of a scoop on Walt and maybe like know who to off. But now it's like Walt knows who he is. Now Gus is going to feel protective, and like he's going to like need to get rid of his enemies essentially. So I think he's lured in Walt with this promise of a deal. And I think what's more likely to happen here is Walt's going to get captured and forced to make meth. He's going to become like a producer. I think this will leave Jesse an ability to kind of come in and save Walt in some sort of way, because Jesse is a loose end right now from the fact of using his drugs, ironically. And I think Gus is going, I don't know where the show's going to go with this exactly, but we saw those two dead bodies that they keep showing. And I thought Jesse and Walt, which is a possibility. Why would Jesse be there? That wouldn't make much sense. So I think there's a possibility that Gus is going to kill both Skylar and Walt Jr. It seems unlikely because Skylar is probably at the hospital, so I don't know how that would work exactly, especially with this timing. But, he either kills Jesse and Walt, but I don't know how you get that through the DEA or whatever, or not, or the investigation agents. But I think he's gonna maybe kill Skylar and Walt Jr. and he's gonna essentially hold Walt hostage in that way, and that'll give Walt some sort of ability to fight back against something, maybe make Walt a hero in the end. So those are my lofty predictions, which I know you can't really say much of anything about.
Nope. But, I like it.
Yeah, but I mostly just go with that idea because it ties all the different storylines together in a way, and it kind of brings them to some sort of fruition there. Now, with that said, like, the toaster is a bullshit. Like, have you ever like toasted something and like the right side toasted a little bit more than the left side, or like they're so fucking sensitive with their potentiometers. Yeah,
you should give me like 30 or 40 more minutes of this toaster rant.
You think so?
I mean, either that or we could watch the episode.
Oh,
which do you think is going to be better for your Breaking Bad commentary show?
Reaction.
Your one choice.
God damn it. Okay. Well, in that case, thank you, Meader, for saving me from that rant. I knew it was coming, and you prevented it or stopped it before it was 40 minutes. So I'll release a separate video with my toaster rant, so just be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
But, if you don't have anything else to say, we can get into Reaction Meader.
That sounds great.
All right. Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was Season 6, Episode 57 of Breaking Bad. On this episode, so much happened. I think this is probably I'd say this is my favorite episode so far, actually. And it's such a strange episode because it's doing so much, but almost all of what it does is unspoken. I think that's what's really affecting me with it. It's a very, say, metaphor, foreshadowing, character emotion. I don't even know. It's to me, it's like jazz. This episode is jazz. It's doing a lot of complex things, and like I don't fully understand it. Like I can see some notes going by, I can see some phrases, but the whole picture, it's very, I don't know. It's creating a whole, but the whole's it's very hard to put together from the parts. That's kind of my general overview. How do you say, Meader?
Tons and tons of symbolism and metaphor throughout the whole thing, and then it takes all of the loose ends, and kind of loops everything together in a really cool way.
So this episode, there's so much happening here that I think I'm getting some hand-holding because I'm still trying to process everything. And for me, where I'm getting kind of tripped up is there's definitely a lot of high-level stuff going on too. And so it's going to be very hard to keep this episode straight. But where should we start off?
Let's just go through kind of the highlights of the episode as they happen, because I think it all culminates at the end. The last two scenes are like insanity. So we could start with like the episode open, which was Walt doing the deal and then going to the hospital.
Right. So he managed to do the deal, and then he went to the hospital. So those are obviously his priorities.
Yep.
He also later in the episode revealed that he had a bit of sanctimony against Jesse because he believes that he missed the birth of his daughter because of Jesse to some degree, and was kind of holding that against him. And but he did do the deal, and I'm really surprised the deal happened because I had my predictions at the beginning of the episode. I still feel like my predictions actually might come to fruition, but only if they happen next episode. If it doesn't happen next episode, it's probably not going to happen because we have those couple of plot lines I talked about. But he goes there, and Walt is so hard for me to read in these aspects. I understand his character, like I understand the dark part of his character much better than I understand the light part of his character. Like the happy father Walt, that's like the caring, nurturing Walt. Like that's so hard for me to like comprehend, kind of like see.
Well, I mean, it's arguable that that's the original Walt from episode 1. The one who fumbled the gun, the one who, was going to kill himself when he realized he was going to be caught for what he did.
So I suppose I think my only thing is we never saw him like be super nurturing. We just saw him just overwhelmed with annoyances and issues. I don't know if we ever saw him really care for Skylar or care for Walt Jr. Maybe Walt Jr. a bit. But I don't know. Like I think we've, or at least I think I've seen that more as he's kind of progressed into this other Heisenberg character. We kind of see that character, but it like this episode really established me that like this thing Walt's like what Walt wanted wasn't like necessarily a lie. Like the episode explores the idea of what if Walt actually got what he wanted in some way. Like here he got to see, he didn't see the birth of his daughter, but he saw his daughter. And he really loves that connection. And then, he's proud of what he did in making that money and supporting and all these different things. And we kind of see him have these like happy family moments. And I think he loves that. He loves being in that state, like that scene where he was on the bed with Skylar and he's just holding the baby. Like that's what Walt wanted. But of course, things come to interrupt it. So the first interruption happened when he came into the room with Skylar, and then there was Ted. Yeah, that's right, Ted. And Walt was I think he's confused. He also kind of knows what it implies, but he doesn't seem like he would want to face that. And Skylar, to me, had some sort of like satisfaction on that, because I feel like she's been trying to gain some sort of control, not control in a bad way, but some sort of handle on her relationship with Walt. And I think she might have the trigger here. She might have the thing that can kind of pull on his heart a little bit. And I think she was happy to see him uncomfortable with that. And it's not like they didn't play off the relationship like being like romantic or anything, but there's a little bit of a hints there, a little bit of a certain things going on with that. And I think Walt got the subtext.
Yeah. No, I think that's nail on the head there.
And you think Skylar's wrong for that? Or, I mean, maybe this is a bad way to put it, but like, what do you think of Skylar's like actions in this instance?
I don't think she really had any actions in that instance. She had a baby.
Yeah. Or maybe her reaction to kind of getting some satisfaction out of Walt's floundering.
I think that's implied by you. Or inferred by you. I don't think it was necessarily implied.
Okay, so you don't actually think that was the case in the scene?
It may have been.
Okay.
But I think that you could, because if you look at it through that lens, I think you'll see that. And if you look at it through an innocent lens, then you'd see that. I don't think it's a stretch to see it through the lens you're seeing it, given the history we've seen with the awkward birthday song and other things of that nature. So I don't think it's a stretch for you to feel that way.
Yeah.
I think that's a valid assertion.
Yeah. For me, it was the kiss on the cheek that this kind of made it. If there was no kiss on the cheek, like I understand. And also he was kind of hidden away too, which I think was this like happenstance, nice little reveal. But I also think it's kind of like, there's someone in a relationship you don't know or you didn't expect, but I'll take it there. I'm open to being wrong, of course. So from there, let's see. So Walt goes back to they go back home, right? And
yeah, she asks him to go pick up her bag. So he goes back home and stashes the money.
That's right. And it's in the walls. I don't know if that has any significance, but it's like a barrier.
Do you remember where he used to store it?
In the baby room.
Right. In the future room, if you will, when it was just a tiny bit, and then there was a gun at that point.
Yeah.
And now it's just all of the money, and the baby's here, but it's not in the baby room now. It's in the garage. It's in the walls. It is super interesting.
I think they made a point of showing the washer dryer there too, just as a point of like laundering money. A little bit of a pun there.
Yeah. Yep. It's dirty money right now.
Yeah.
Hidden away.
And it looks like it's old school money, which makes sense because old school bills don't have as much of the tracking stuff on it. It's kind of an issue when I was in banking because sometimes you get old bills and they like, you're like, is this counterfeit? Maybe. Like you just can't know sometimes. So, yeah, I like that little attention to detail they had. But he is trying to go about his life caring for the baby, and then these little things just keep interrupting.
Well, I think next they have dinner, right? That's the dinner with Hank and all that, right?
Yeah. And Hank,
maybe it's the phone call from Jesse. Either or.
I don't know. Well, let's cover the phone call with Jesse, and then we'll go.
It was the phone call with Jesse next. Yeah.
Okay. So he gets the call from Jesse, and Walt is withholding this information from Jesse about the money, or but the money about the meth too, because Jesse thought someone stole from them, and then Walt's withholding that, and Walt's withholding that. It's a little unclear, but it seems like a hit and run, or like. Oh, okay, actually, no, it's two things here. I think Walt would have eventually given that money to Jesse when he came to his senses a little bit. I think that was mostly just Walt being mad at Jesse. And
yeah, I think it was a punishment. He was letting Jesse's own emotions work against him.
Yeah.
You have the pieces to the puzzle if you want take the time to look, but if you're just going to fly off the handle, like, this is what you get.
Yeah.
Deal with it yourself.
Because the way I took that when I first saw it was that Walt was just going to be like a greedy person there and just grab the money and run. And I think we see a little bit of that dichotomy played out with Jane a little bit later on. But Walt does see it as a partnership. He sees Jesse as family. And yeah, like he's like being the father there essentially. And like Jesse needs to learn his lesson and gonna torture him a little bit here with this. And they go out and have their dinner. And there's a couple of things with this shot of the dinner. So number one, it's at nighttime. Not that that matters, but second thing is we see the established pool there, and that's the pool that we see in these foreshadowing shots from early in the season. So this is like a very big heads up from the directors saying, hey, you know this pool you've been seeing? Well, in case you didn't know where this pool was from, it's from this right here. This is Walt's place.
And it's not the first time that they've had these exact types of scenes around this pool. They when they had Walt's, they have dinner out here all the time with Hank and Marie. You know, this is where Walt forced his son, or allowed either or his son to drink until he puked, and him and Hank kind of had a battle at that point.
Yep.
There have been other times when back when Walt told the story of how he and Skylar first met and all of that, and that was like a lot early on. So this is where like a lot of really big things get built and kind of get fleshed out between familial relationships.
Yeah. It's almost like there's usually these analogies for like rebirth with water and everything like that. And so I think it's always like a change, right? There's always a little bit of a rebirth that happens around that point. And here, this is Walt trying to rebirth himself as a father. You know, he's trying to become that man again. And,
did you catch the name of the episode?
No.
Phoenix.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense because we saw a lot of different rebirths here.
Yep.
And
we'll come back to that. But
yeah.
so talk to me about this pool scene, about this dinner scene. What do you gather from that? What's Walt and Hank are talking about, like a security system for the pool?
Yeah. So I don't know what Walt's impetus is entirely there. I think he knows something's wrong. I think he knows that much. The more on the face thing is Walt has a bunch of money that he wants to secure and also has the baby he wants to secure too. But I think the big kind of like for me, it's kind of the foreshadowing there is with the bucket of Los Pollos. which.
So what did that mean to you? Because I think it meant different things to us.
Oh, you think? Okay. To me, it's that Gus has injected himself into that relationship. He's there, and
Okay.
and he is present in a way that's uncomfortable.
Okay.
The uncomfort comes from my perception of it, right? Because for me, it's like this thing in the background. It's like the threat you see, but you don't see. And I think there's so much foreshadowing and analogous stuff with this, because I think essentially what they're communicating is that Gus is watching Walt this whole time. There's a lot of little parts here where they get calls and it's unclear who it is. And I think they're baiting you into thinking it's Gus, but it never plays off to be Gus. Or, and it's not going to be Gus, of course. It's going to be like one of his henchmen. But there's this looming threat in the background that keeps encroaching. And then there's even this scene where Walt is watching TV, and then it's like they're watching an animal. And then also there's a whole thing with, watching the baby, right? Like essentially it's just kind of giving this idea that Walt's being watched.
It's so cool that both of those scenes we both got completely different things from.
Really? So I'm curious to hear what you thought.
So what is the conversation they're having during this dinner scene?
About getting cameras and stuff like that, security system.
And then that leads to Hank and Marie saying, we'll buy it for you. And then them saying, no, don't do that. And then Skyler talking about going back to work. And it's money. Yeah. They're talking about money. And then Walt Jr.'s like, yeah, I might have to get a job. And like the whole time, Los Pollos represents Walt's other job, where it represents the money. They're talking about money. The solution is literally right in front of him, and he can do nothing about it.
Ooh.
And that ends up coming in a little bit later when he talks to Sal, and he says the same thing. He's like, I have $1 million in cash in my wall, and I can't do anything with it.
I see. So
my family's talking about charity, and I have all the money I could ever need.
So I think that's also 100% correct too. I still think what I said is accurate, but I think that's very obvious as well, because they are talking about money. I mean, I forgot about the whole money thing, to be honest, but they're talking about money, and Walt has this weird pride, and I want you to describe the pride to me a little bit later, because I'm having a time piecing together this episode. But I thought Walt didn't want Hank and Marie to buy that security system because he didn't want them to potentially find the money, or is kind of trying to more keep him out of his business as opposed to rejecting charity. But I think it makes more sense that it's rejecting charity sort of thing. Maybe also a little bit of like what I said, but I think mostly he just, he doesn't want their help. He wants to be self-sufficient. And also, that's just so genius, like having like the answer for their money solutions being right there on the table. Like that's hilarious.
You know what else is interesting? Who brought the chicken?
Hank. So
Hank is completely blind to this store, this chicken store being a front for a meth business.
Yeah.
He's actually offering it. Like he is in a way supporting the meth business without even realizing he's like, it's things happening right in front of Hank's face and Hank not even noticing.
Yeah. There was a couple lines in one of the episodes I was going through, the reaction, and there's so many moments of that with Hank. It's so intriguing to watch. Like, there was a part where Hank was like Hank was going through like the lab supplies with Walt, and it's like be aware of them. You can't trust the people a lot of times. And it's just like right there, Hank. He succumbs to his own his own stuff. But yeah.
He's kind of blind to what's directly in front of him in that regard.
I wonder what's going to tip him off, because he's eventually going to get tipped off. Obviously, what is it going to be? I think it's going to be something more intellectual. If I was to guess here, just based off this conversation, because it's I don't think it's going to be anything like seeing something. I think it's going to be more like, wait, how does that make any sense? Like that like it's going to be a local detective, like a murder mystery sort of thing.
Ooh. That sounds exciting.
Or it could be, if my theory is correct with what's going to happen with the family, Hank might be trying to get some sort of vengeance, and maybe it's not Jesse that rescues Walt from this whole thing. No, and I'm making a lot of assumptions here that my theory is correct here, so let's go with that. But it might be Hank trying, Hank's on the trail, and Hank's the one that kind of uncovers this, which would also be intriguing.
It would be. So next is Jesse confronts Walt at work, I believe.
Yeah.
Because it's the next day. It's the next after the work day, I guess. There lots of stuff here.
Yep. We saw some interesting things because Walt wanted to be mad at Jesse. Okay, Walt was mad at Jesse there. Jesse came to Walt because Jesse's not dumb. I think Walt probably figured he'd figure it out, right? He's like, come on, it's not rocket science. And I think Walt was kind of okay with it. He wanted some sort of confrontation there. And he even let Jesse stay there. He wasn't like, hey, let's go do this somewhere else. He felt secure enough to do it right there. And so they have it back and forth. And Walt, I think, kind of shot himself in the foot here. I think Walt was completely right in everything he said. I think he went too far with some of his comments about stuff like, your junkie girlfriend and stuff like that. I think he went way too far with that sort of stuff. It wasn't helpful. I think you could have pointed out the dangers without doing the way he did, because I think what he did ultimately was he attacked Jesse in these kind of visceral ways. He attacked the girl he loved, and made him and everything feel bad. So what's Jesse going to do but feel super defensive? And now you're saying you can't get the money unless you get clean. Like I think if Walt came at this from a different angle, things could have actually been resolved. But it wasn't. Definitely some metaphorical things going on too. Like there was like a little firecracker or something behind Jesse's head exploding.
Did you see that? Because that was like a drawing of somebody did at the school, I guess. Did you see the one right below it?
It was like a bunch of buildings, and I was trying to make out what it was.
It was a hospital.
Was it a hospital?
Yeah.
What would that represent? I mean, I know the baby.
The hospital.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Yes, the hospital. But is it the whole connection with the baby and everything?
Yeah, I mean, this is the scene where Walt says, "You made me miss the birth of my daughter," and then the camera pans to Jesse, and that's the first time you see the firecracker or whatever, and the hospital right under it.
I see. So it's kind of like
literally an explosion about this thing. It's not even subtle.
Yeah. Okay. If I made out what that thing was, it would have made more sense. But okay, so it's like Jesse felt that in his heart because he actually does have that personal connection with Walt.
Yeah.
And then it made his head explode a little bit. Like.
Yeah, I think that's what hit him the hardest.
Huh. Yeah. And in a weird way, this is where the irony comes from here, because we have Jesse feeling bad about having Walt miss time with his family, right? The birth of his daughter. But the whole thing of the drug trade has resulted in Walt missing time with his family, like altogether too. Like there's a weird, like, subtle irony there.
Yeah. And then how does that scene end?
I'm trying to remember. Walt says, "No drugs for you. Unless you get clean, no money."
No money.
No money. And I forget how Jesse reacted, but
he threw a beaker at him.
Oh yeah, that's right. He threw the beaker, and then there's that map behind him. I think the map was symbolizing like their drug empire, the drug trade, right? Because they talk about expanded regions. We're gonna control all of this right here, and then you see it just go away. It just kind of rolls up into nothing. And
what was that a map of?
The world. That wasn't a map of the world?
No, it was the periodic table of elements.
I thought it was a map of a world. Okay.
It was the elements table, which is why when you said map, I was like, I don't know what he's talking about, but I think his reasoning is right, but I see what he read there was wrong.
So I misread that with the map. I think my point's still there. Maybe it's not a map of.
I mean, it's their chemistry, right?
Yeah, their chemistry.
Their chemistry. It's the chemistry of the business that they run. Like that's what it was founded on. Anyway, that's what was, yeah. It implies a breaking of them as partners.
Yeah, breaking the bonds, you could say. You know,
Yeah. And with a beaker.
yeah, which is it's the meth that kind of caused that break, which again plays into some of the later episode stuff with the drugs causing the breaking of the bonds between the other family members.
Yeah.
But okay, that makes a bit more sense being in a science classroom, I suppose.
Do you remember any? Do you have anything else for that scene?
I don't think so. I do think that scene does play out later in different ways. Like this is where I'm saying this episode is jazz, because there's themes just crisscrossing all about like, everywhere. It's like a theme city.
Do you remember what scene is next?
Not really.
Okay, so next is Walt showing Marie how to support the baby on its side rather than on its back or on its stomach. So he puts a towel down and like puts it on his side, and then she has some expensive solution. He's like, I think a towel will work just fine. And then Skylar comes in and says, come look at what your son did. And this is the whole finding out he made a charity website. Talk to me about this.
So
this is big.
There's so much there. So I don't know much about the Marie situation there. Like, I guess this is showing Walt is a bit knowledgeable as a father. Like he kind of knows how to do things. But this whole thing with
the charity,
I don't know. That's super complex to tackle there, because I really felt for Skylar. So Walt Jr., let's just call him Jr., he creates this charity website. And number one, good job on the website. I mean, I think you should teach your skills to Jesse, because, I mean, maybe Jesse helped him out with that website. But
it's a good chance.
He's trying to create a charity website to pay for these expenses for the things. And
so he doesn't have to get a job because he's fucking lazy.
Walt is at first was like honored and humbled, because he sees his pictures and it's just talking about how great he is and everything. And there's a line there that I need to cover. Like, I want to read the whole thing if I'm being honest.
Me too. But
okay. But Walt's just, you can kind of feel like Walt's heartstrings getting tugged a little bit here. And he's just like, oh, this is so nice and, cute. But then he finds out it's a charity. And also, I think he sees the one line there, and this undercuts everything. Every little thing.
What's the line?
Okay, I'm going to paraphrase here, but something like, I didn't realize how awesome my father was until he was about to die.
My dad is so amazing. Funny thing is, I didn't realize it until he was dying. I mean, is that not apt?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of
the change in it's a change in Walt.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a meta perspective on things too, because that's Walt's perspective of himself too. Like Walt thought he was nothing. I think part of what gives him like some sort of sense of like, oh, I'm a badass, is the fact he made that money, that he did it. His pride, he built up his pride here, and I don't know if Walt Jr. is recognizing that exactly. It's more just kind of like a childish sort of thing, or not childish, but it's, they say you don't realize what things mean to you until you lose them or are about to lose them. So I think that's what's going to be had there. But it just comments so much on the story and how Walt perceives everything. And also it just, it kind of more stabs Walt in the heart, because he realizes that like maybe he wasn't hot shit. Like maybe this is how his family viewed him. And it comes out so many different directions is what I'm trying to get at. What was your kind of thoughts and opinions on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, the same. It comes back to Walt always being offended when people offer him charity of any sort or offer to help him in any way. And this literally goes way back to the beginning. And I mean, even just think about when the people from Gray Matter were offering money, and like he used it as an excuse, he used it as a scapegoat, but he refused to use it as like an actual means to get by. So this has always been a character trait of Walt, arguably since before this show started.
The conversation after with Skylar, that really killed me. Like, I was getting emotional there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Skylar was kind of feeling like the bond of her family were coming back together. Like things were rebinding. And she just felt so proud and so just like maybe it's this. Like, she was proud of her son, right? And I think she wanted Walt to be proud of her son. But the thing is, Walt's pride or need for pride just overshadowed everything. Like Walt can't let other people be prideful. It has to be all about him in a sort of weird way. Like, he has to be the provider, the source. And it's like he had a line, or there was a line there for some sort of connection that happened, and Walt just killed it. And Skylar just got really upset with that. And then Skylar kind of cut to the chase, like, what do you have against Charity? And then where I'm a little lost on this, maybe not lost, but you see Walt go from like maybe like a 8 or 9 on this, maybe a 10 before, but he goes to like 20, like on this whole like being anti-charity, which I think maybe the anti-charity side's confusing me. I can understand the pride, but he's just so against like any sort of help, and he seemed to look down on other people for getting help too. Like, it's really astounding.
Yeah, I mean, this is a deep-seated one. I think the reason that he escalated so much is because the scope. I think it was like all of these other things have been kind of like familial, close friends, hush-hush offers. Like, hey, we can do this for you, and like no one's going to know except the people who are involved, you know? Now it's, and he said it when he was talking to Saul, being broadcast to the world. And that, like, this is how the world is going to see me.
Yeah.
This is how I'm going to be remembered, is the cancer guy.
Oof.
I'm going to be pitied by everybody in the world. So pitied, in fact, they're going to give me money. That's disgusting. And when she says to him, why do you say charity like it's a dirty word? And he just kind of can't answer it. I think it is like a fundamental, like in his heart, he's like, if you don't know, I can't explain it to you. It's just so ingrained in him that being helped, being pitied is the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but you were very persuasive in that. I think you did a really good job explaining that. And I say that because now I'm kind of going back to empathizing with Walt. Because I'm trying to put myself in his position. And I've said that I've had a lot of similarities with Walt. But if I got sick like that, and I was in this situation, let's say with my wife or girlfriend or whatever, like, I would not want a website or charity site like that made for me. I would have the same sort of inklings. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's like, I think it's a little less like pride for me, but more like a privacy sort of thing for me. Like, I don't want people getting involved in my life in this sort of way. Like, my medical knowledge is like very intimate, and you know, these people shouldn't be involved. So I don't think I'm as, say, stringent on that point as what would be. But yeah, when you put it that way, I can definitely, it makes me reconsider my thoughts of that.
I think it's a fundamental thing in Walt that if you don't understand, I can't explain it to you.
Yeah.
Charity's dirty.
Yeah. This makes me think that a lot of Walt's life prior to this, after Gray Matter, and kind of getting the chemistry job and kind of doing all the things he's been doing, it's been a product of his pride. Like, in some direct ways, but the indirect ways where he is okay with that situation because he's at least responsible for it in some sort of weird way. right? Like he's not accepting help from other people. He wasn't accepting help there, like in his previous life. He was making ends meet. He was taking care of his people. He wasn't very happy or anything, so that's another matter. But I think he was living according to that principle beforehand. He was even providing for Skylar, because my big questions in early episodes, like, what's Skylar do for work? She didn't do anything. She's just kind of, which I thought was kind of strange, but that's just aspect of Walt being played out, but just not in such an extreme way.
Yeah. Yeah, in a submissive way, and now he's playing it out in an aggressive way.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that goes back to the fact that now he has a gun, in his hand.
I mean, he doesn't. Right? I mean, he hasn't. We haven't seen a gun for Walt in a long time.
Sorry, the gun being metaphorical. He's now willing to use aggression to get his ends.
Okay.
Or use violence.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it was something that was untouchable territory for him. And so he had this conversation with Saul. And
yep.
I love Saul so much. Because
there's no bullshit. He cuts right through it all. He's one of the only people who will talk down to Walt, and Walt doesn't like do anything about it.
He's just so rational.
Yeah, my favorite line was when Walt was like, and now they want a chair, and he's like, this is the solution. He's like, there's no deep-seated issues there, right? And just like keeps going. Like, he fucking calls him out.
It's so great. Yeah, and everything. So like Saul's just pure genius. So like, okay, I think one of the stuff Saul says is a standard like, money laundering type stuff. But it's also just like, dude, right here, come on.
Yeah. I mean, he came up with like 4 really good ideas off the top of his head. How can I launder this money? Like, how can I solve this problem? And then ends up coming up with an even better one. One that's maybe never been done before, or at least not on the scale they're trying to.
Pure genius. And I think that's a scene. So Skylar's scene kind of had me caught off guard. Well, that scene kind of caught me off guard too, because these are all like great solutions, right? Like it's just money laundering 101. This is his issue. And he just can't come up with a solution to launder money, which is this whole thing he's doing. Like,
well, he can't come up with a solution to launder the money and get the credit for the money.
Oh,
and that's his problem.
I see.
Because he says, it can't be happenstance. It can't be a gift. It can't be family. I earned that money and everyone needs to know it.
Yeah.
And then the solution is, let's go with your son's charity website that you hated in the first place. Is just so fucking perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. See, Walt's just not a good businessman. He's good at making meth. He's not, I don't think he could become like a super successful drug dealer. Okay, I say that him having made a $1.5 million deal.
Yeah.
But I don't think he could run a drug empire. I don't think he has enough sense for it. Or not willing to make concessions. But yeah, Saul is great for that reason. And I don't know much about this like series they have, Better Call Saul. But if it's just like Saul is giving people straight up advice for like, just, I would watch that. That sounds like incredible. It's just like, hey, dude, this is this, and people are like, well, oh, that sounds kind of evil. It's like, well, what do you want then?
So they come up with a solution. We don't see anything going to actual practice. So I don't know if Walt actually took any of these suggestions and was going to run with them.
I don't think he did, because I think other stuff took precedent, or maybe I'm misreading that.
I think it just kind of ended at him saying like, yo, there's a solution, and Walt just being like, I don't like that solution.
Yeah.
And then it like jumped to the next scene.
So pending, I guess. So what happens after that? Because I feel like it goes to like the Jesse storyline.
Yeah, I think we should at least, because we've kind of jumped over it a little bit, I think we should kind of circle that in now. Where Jesse and Jane are doing drugs, are doing heroin specifically, and are like just kind of, they have a relationship, a very clear relationship at this point. And then it's a lot about Jane. It's a lot about Jane and her father's relationship.
Yeah. So that's right. So
Her father's trying to get her clean.
Yeah, still
Goes
going
with her still after 18 months
Mhm.
to whatever that word is. Rehab.
Yeah, rehab. And there's a lot of complex questions with this, like about her father as a person and what may have happened here. Because I think a lot of people might be quick to assume that the father fucked up in some sort of way. We didn't see the mother in this instance, so maybe she died, maybe she divorced or whatever. Maybe they were never together to begin with. But the father definitely cares a lot for Jane, is very protective over her. And I think he went a little bit too far, but when you're in that kind of shit and seeing your daughter kind of go to that length, I can get it. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go on this limb here, and there's a possibility the father didn't fuck up in any major way. The fact is, like, there's some tiny portion of people who, when they're exposed to a drug like heroin, like it's just the drug just matches their chemistry so well. It's going to change that person, like, if they go down that road.
Yeah. It's possible in a previous episode they mentioned where the mother is. I don't remember. So we just know she's not there. And Jane asked if he's been seeing anybody. It was kind of a pushback of the question being asked to her. But, it's at least out there that that's an option that he could be seeing somebody else.
So
there's a minor thing I wanted to mention. It's very short and quick, but when Jane is showing Jesse how to boot up, she's like kind of walking him through it, and he's ranting about how Walt is keeping his money, right? Owes him money is how Jane understands it. And she's just he's kind of mirroring a lot of the things that Walt says, saying like, he said, I taught him everything anyway. And he says like, and she's like, I don't even understand why you need him. And he's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then he boots up and is laid back, and she is like, well, how much does he owe anyway? Finds out it's $500,000. And then you see the switch in her eyes just like go. But at the very end of that, when she lays him back, she puts him on his side and puts something behind his back, just like Walt did with the baby. Same exact idea. And then you see that light switch in her eye just go, where she's like, holy shit.
Yeah. There's definitely some parallelisms there between Walt and Jane, and I didn't catch that one. That's super interesting. And also, we could talk about the way Jane died, being like a baby would die, on its throat. But we'll get to that. Provided Jane died.
I mean, that is part 3 of my my bringing this up to you. So, well, we definitely will get there. I'm glad you see what I see.
I didn't catch that.
Well, now, yeah,
I didn't catch that little thing there. That's super interesting, and it did feel like for a lot of this episode that Jane and Walt were like Jesse's parents, right? Like father, and Jesse was kind of like a baby. Like Jesse during this episode was super like weird to watch because he kind of just looked like a little kid, just very naive and just kind of like, huh? It's mommy and daddy fighting? What's going on? Like this I don't know, childlike, I'd say, and definitely not in a good state of mind. And Jane, when she like she's already changed from the drugs, and what she saw there and what happened to her, it's so hard to describe, and it's so intriguing because like you said, there's that light switch. Like she hears that, and she's like instantly like, "This is my chance."
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it was a big thing for her, but I don't think that's when the light switch happened.
When you don't think it was when Jesse said it?
No, I think it was when status quo changed. So her dad catches her, A, lying to him about hooking up with Jesse, and B, still using when she's supposed to be at a meeting. Gets in there, throws Jesse around a little bit, and she begs him not to call the cops and promises she'll go to rehab tomorrow. So now circumstances have pushed her to needing an escape. And now she's willing to really press because now they have a timeline of 1 day before she has to go into a rehab, like actual program. So that's like, she won't be at her house anymore. She will be at a rehab facility.
Yeah.
Now there's a time crunch. That's when things really ramp up for her.
So I'm going to make a rebuttal to that, or at least give my interpretation of events here. Because I think it switched right when she heard that. And then her dad comes into the picture and starts kind of wrecking house. Her dad already knew something was up from like the previous conversation. Also, to go back, in the AA meeting or whatever it was, there was a whole thing about like rebirths and everything. And that kind of plays in with this whole idea of rebirth and Jane being rebirthed as something else. Let's call her not Jane. And the father blows up, and Jane kind of knows where this is going. She knows it's going to be about going back to rehab. So the first thing she has to do is talk him down from the whole cops thing, like calling the cops and everything. And she does this by getting like very like childlike and very like I think the word would be neatinous. Like she talks like a 5-year-old in a sort of way, and that's the real thing people do.
She becomes an instant e-girl. Like immediately, she's an e-girl.
That's a great way to put it. And so she just goes to like straight manipulation, which kind of what threw me off a little bit, because Jane's character went from like this very like easygoing, relaxed, like kind of cool. Like I would hang out with Jane, to be honest. But then she, like this super manipulative side comes out, and she starts talking to them from going to cops, which is number one, right? Because she's fucked then, and then also Jesse's fucked too, and there goes the money. But also, she starts talking Jesse up once she talks him down. And I think she's manipulating Jesse right there, 100%, right? She's saying all good things about Jesse. And her whole plan here is to get her dad to delay things by 1 day so she can get the money to delay that. I don't think I think she manipulated this whole situation to her favor. And I don't think it was when her dad got mad. I think she's already doing that. And she just uses it to her advantage to manipulate everything even further.
I think that the situation warranted her needing to manipulate. Otherwise, she would be facing consequences. I don't think she would have put the pressure she did on Walt. I don't think she would have twisted Jesse in the way she did, or her dad, if there wasn't now a timeline on it. You think she put the 1 day timeline because she wanted to manipulate. I think that was her only option. That was her like literally begging to get out of this situation. And now there's a timeline on it. Self-imposed, but also kind of not. Like the circumstances required it.
I think we agree. I think that she did that timeline so that she'd have enough time to get the money. And I do agree that her later actions were a consequence of that timeline being so strict. So she wouldn't have gone to those same lengths if she had a longer timeline. She would have been a bit more talk it out. But I think the timeline that she manipulated, I'll use less. The timeline that she suggested was more like an agreement with her dad, because you said like 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, right? Her dad probably wouldn't go with that. Like, you're just playing me off here. So that's kind of the only kind of like delay in time that would be acceptable for a dad to kind of also take. So I think circumstantial, but I think her main motivation there was the money and kind of getting the money here. It wasn't just like saving her butt, because so what? She goes to rehab, right? She loses Jesse. Okay. Actually, putting it that way, there are some issues there, but I think her main goal was to get the money and kind of be free of her dad at that point. And that's coming from her druggy mind. So
no, I think we do agree.
Okay. We're just coming at it from slightly different perspectives, but seeing the same thing.
I think you think it was just a tiny bit more premeditated than I do.
Yeah.
I think it's like 1/2 measure behind is where you think she started manipulating, and I think it was a tiny bit ahead of that.
Yeah.
And but regardless, we're on the same page. She was being very manipulative to literally everybody at that point.
Yep. And like Jesse got talked up there, and he really took that to heart because he's just like, we saw him like at a super low before, but I don't think he's ever been this low. And I think it just overtook him a bit. So they come up with the plan, and then the first thing Jane does, what happens there? That's right, Jane.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jane calls Walt and pretends to be one of the students, and then Jesse's just kind of in there in the background, just kind of like being an observer. Like, it's almost like when like your mom calls in for you to call out of work sick or something, or to call somebody because they're angry. And it's like, how dare you do this to my child? And Jesse's just kind of like, oh, mommy, you know, you're doing this to me. Like, it kind of felt like that. I'm not getting this across very well, but it does kind of the sense. And she blackmails Walt like to 150%. And Walt's now in this very precarious situation because what does he do? Does he give it to him? Because I think at this point, Walt's more considering that he wants to help Jesse as a family member, as opposed to, he doesn't want to cut that relationship off. He wants it to be there. And then Jane's essentially doing something to break this relationship. And also break the relationships between Walt and all his family. Like, this is about breaking all the bonds.
Yeah, and I mean, that whole thing was like predicated by it was Walt and the baby and Skylar laying on the bed together. And you said live, like, I think this is what Walt really, like, what Walt's always wanted. Like, he actually seems happy. And that's when Jane calls. And that Skylar answers it, then Walt comes out, blah, blah, blah. But that's the moment he was in, was being with his family when Jane makes that phone call. Definitely blackmails him. And that leaves Walt with that hard decision. What do we do? And then Jane and Jesse have a conversation at that point where Jesse's like, I don't think this is right. Like, what if he doesn't give the money? And she's like, he will. And he's like, well, what if he doesn't? He's like, I'm not the type of person to roll on someone. I'm not the type of person to go to and by extension, neither are you. Like, we're not that type of person, which is him kind of like projecting onto her, like, this is what I think of you. You and I are the same. And then she kind of uses their relationship to be like, well, because Jesse says him and I are partners. And she's like, no, you and I are partners.
Yeah.
So she is definitely driving a wedge between the two of them as much as she possibly can.
I'm trying to think about this because I think what Walt said a little bit later on, that Jesse, you're not seeing this right, or you're not thinking clearly. That's kind of what I'm seeing here, because we saw a little bit of Jesse's like true face there with that conversation. But the only thing I can think of is, number one, the situation that happened, you know, losing his friend, just being super down, everything, like all those events, and then now getting the heroin. I think he's just like, so his brain just got fried and he's not really capable of making decisions at this point. Like Jane's kind of pulling him along and he's not really doing much of anything.
He seems very suggestible in this time.
I mean, I've been in kind of a state like that once before, and it's not fun. It's like you get enough stress and you kind of have a little bit of a breakdown like that, and like people can tell you anything, you're just kind of gonna go along with it. So I definitely understand what Jesse's going through right there. Maybe not as much, but kind of.
Then Walt, that's the scene with Walt watching the elephant program with the baby monitor.
Yep.
So talk to me about your perception of this, because we differ in how we perceived this whole scene.
I'm going to guess yours is probably more accurate, but my perception of this is, I think this is another Gus thread here, and Walt's the animal being watched, and it's like it's on the TV, and there's also the whole baby monitor there. The baby's also being watched, right? So the whole family's being watched, and I think that's the aspect there with Gus. And there's this looming thread in the background. Again, I think that's what's kind of being foreshadowed there. But I think more directly, it's also a matter of Walt thinking through this issue with Jesse and what to do and how it has to do with the family. So I think there's that other aspect there too. So I think it's kind of playing two different roles. I think it starts on one, but I think it swaps to the other, like about a quarter of the way through.
There's a so what's on the TV is the elephants, and there's two things that you barely hear in the background from the program. It starts off talking about the matriarchy that elephants have and how the female leads in the elephant culture. And that obviously is a direct parallel to Jesse being led right now by a matriarchal figure in Jane.
Let's see.
And then it goes to the whole thing where she's singing the Mockingbird song, which is about buying baby things.
Okay, yeah.
And it ends with, mommy loves you and so do, or daddy loves you and so do I. And then Skylar comes out and Walt is like crying because to me, he's been in this situation before where he is experiencing his family like at a distance, right? But the difference being that every other time he's done it, when he broke out of the hospital and he was hiding and he saw him and his son hugging in the kitchen, I know there are like a ton of other times where he's just been observing from a distance, like on the phone, things like that. Now it's actually like literally right in the other room. The baby's there, which the baby has been the future the whole time, everything he's worked towards. He's reached everything he wanted. And he's now at a crossroad where like this is an opportunity for him to kind of break off everything that he had been doing and be with his family. And then Skylar comes out and is like, hey, what's going on? You learn about elephants or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then asks him to go out, gives him an excuse, which is something she had done all this entire episode. Every time he needed an excuse to go out and do something, she gave him the perfect excuse to leave and go do a thing, which was super interesting because he didn't have to lie for most of it until the end, but he just did what she told him to do. Go home. Okay, I'm going to go home and store all the money. Like, this is the perfect excuse. And then there's a line at the very end that coming from the TV where they say something about with elephants, the younger, non-dominant male will follow the lead of what the female says to do. So, and that's like when the tear starts like rolling down his cheek and she comes out, which is all super interesting because it's kind of paralleling like what they're doing right now. And I think it's kind of tearing Walt to say like, am I willing to admit that like, to do what this other person wants me to do, regardless of what I want? Like, am I willing to follow in this situation, knowing that like right now, this situation is keeping me from my family who are right there and I'm observing them from a distance. What do I do? What do I do in this situation?
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, it was a lot. It was a word soup there.
No. Just give me a second here. Just capitulate. Because I didn't catch what the actual thing was there. If I should have had the subtitles on. I didn't. And I would have been able to follow that a little bit better. But let's see. So, elephants. So here, I think the elephants. I guess there's a couple of different elephants going on because there's the matriarch of Jane and Jesse being the less alpha elephant. You could say Walt is in that situation too, and the economy. I think that would definitely imply Jane, Walt, but I think it's more Jane, Jesse. And then in an instant here, to tie it back to Skylar asking Walt to do things, I think that's a little bit of a thing there too. Like Walt feels a little bit subservient to Skylar right now. And I think Skylar is just using this as a way to rely on Walt. She's trying to rebuild the family connection to some degree. I also say like Skylar might just like peace out at some point. She might just feel like this like divorce. Well, it's time to go. But I think she also is trying to give this family a chance. And Walt is not really doing what she wants. ultimately, or we never see him do it at the very least. And I think when Walt went to get a beer, I think that's also Walt kind of, rebelling a bit from Skylar with that whole sort of thing. Like he wanted to prove he wasn't one of those beta elephants or whatever. And I think there's an aspect there, and kind of him seeing, I think it's very poignant there where he's seeing this relationship from a distance, from like a window. And you are right. We have seen that a couple of times. And we even saw that later in the episode where he's kind of looking in this window of Jesse and Jane and kind of seeing them from that perspective. But with that, he breaks down the door, or, metaphorically. And the whole thing with the Mockingbird song, that's very apt as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering, because your rendition of the scene kind of puts everything into perspective, and I'm wondering if my reading of the Gus connection is imagined, or if it's actually there, or if it's imagined, or if it's there. And obviously, you probably can't say much about that because that would be foreshadowing if it was. But if it's yours, that's completely fine. If it's both at the same time, that would just be like top tier writing, I gotta say. So I hope it's both, but if not, I think yours is probably pretty apt and pretty accurate there.
And I mean, it's the literal elephant in the room, right?
Yes.
And she addresses it as she always has. She says, "Oh, you're watching elephants, learning about elephants," and he doesn't say anything. In that whole scene, he doesn't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what's happening with Jesse too. Like Jane's is taking the reign on all this, and Jesse's just kind of going along with it. Again, though, I don't think Jesse would go along this in his normal state. Like, I think he has a bit, like Walt has a lot of pride, but I think Jesse also has pride, but his pride is more negotiable to some degree. But I don't think Jesse would really be forward throwing people under the bus like that.
Yeah,
like, I don't think that's Jesse's lifestyle.
So then Walt brings the money to him and refuses to give it to Jane, wants to give it to Jesse. And this is where you like what Walt has to say in this moment.
Yeah.
He says you're not thinking clearly.
Yeah. Which obviously it's true, and you can see Walt's pained by this because I mean Walt understands the situation 100% because Jane is obviously just using Jesse for the money at this point. I think whatever feelings Jane had for Jesse, which I think were 100% true and valid, but I think the drug of whatever this is Jane's experiencing, because Jane's having a complete breakdown on us. Like whatever it was there is overshadowed by this new thing, this new Jane. And she's more focused on the money and using Jesse to get this money. Like Jesse's just a sideline in this. Like we see Jesse's being behind Jane as this conversation happens. Like, and Jesse's not trying to take this money. It's so weird. And I think what Walt said there, very apt. And I think he handled that a lot better than he did in the chemistry classroom. Like I said, I think if Walt handled this situation prior and didn't blow up on him like that, it could have been a lot different.
And then at the end, he says, "How do I know she'll keep her mouth shut?" And she's like, "You don't." Continuing to be a threat.
Oh, yeah. And Jesse started kind of fighting back against that because I think Jesse saw the poisoning that would happen there. But yeah. Yep. I mean, I think Jane shot herself in the foot there because I don't know if we approach that part of the episode as
Almost, because next he goes to the bar.
Yep.
And who does he see at the bar?
He sees Jane's dad.
Which is fucking wild.
Mm-hmm. They're both trying to get away from their problems. Their familiar problems, too.
Which is each other's person, right?
Yeah.
Which is wild. And they talk about each other. You know, Walt talks about Jesse and her dad talks about Jane.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what his name is.
Nah, who knows? But yep, they have a little bit of a heart-to-heart.
Just real quick, the first thing they talk about is water on Mars, right?
Yep.
Do you know what they called that? Operation Operation Phoenix.
Really?
And it was on the TV. So it kind of tied back in with this whole, the title of the episode and all of this rebirth stuff that you've been talking about, all kind of tying together right here in this moment.
I wonder if that has some sort of connection with the show more generally, like going far away to do something incredible with science, and the reaction, like Walt sees the beauty in that, but I think the father, Jane's father, who's kind of the everyman, is kind of like, what's the point? Kind of a difference in perspectives. I'm grasping at a straw there, but I think there might be something a bit. But to move on, so they have to talk back and forth, and I think this is a very good conversation because it sounds like a conversation two people would have in these situations. And the father's really just can't offer advice. He's not a wise sage. He's kind of failed with Jane on this front. Failed, let's say, because we don't really know what happened there. But have a little bit back and forth, and there's one scene in particular where Walt's talking about what is he saying? Something about like something with a daughter or something, and in the background we see like a boxing match going on between two people, like very on the nose right there.
Yeah, the fight going on inside them.
Yeah, and it's a cognitive fight too. But then Jane's father, and let me just touch on how Jane's father is a little bit different from Jesse's parents. Jesse's parents were out to protect Jesse. Like, even if Jesse was incriminated with drugs, like there's a whole scene back where Hank is like talking to Jesse's mother, and Jesse's mother gets very like defensive, and like she's not gonna rat out her son. Jane's father was about to rat out Jane. It came to that, which is a little bit extreme. So there's a little bit of difference there. But then kind of when it came back to it, the father still chose family. He kind of got talked off the ledge still. Could have gone wrong very easily. But Jane's father's like, hey, family, you just got to keep trying. This is what you do. And there's so much in there because this is kind of been the story of Walt's family with Walt. Walt just keeps trying with them. Walt's family, Skylar, Walt Jr., Hank, Marie, like all of them just keep trying with Walt. And this is kind of what they're doing. He doesn't even realize it. I think that's the big elephant in the room. Like, okay, he realizes it, but he sees it as an inconvenience. Like he's not all about it. But then I think Walt kind of learns that lesson with his family. Like he just needs to keep trying. He's having this issue. He's really affecting his heart. And I think that was probably the best lesson to be had there. And before we move on to the next scene, what else do you have to say about it? Because I think you do.
No, I think that's the extent of it. I mean, the big thing that I take away is that Jane's dad unknowingly convinces Walt to go back to Jesse's apartment.
Yeah. And there, Walt sees them and sees they're like a peaceful couple a bit. So I guess there's kind of two things there, because he saw them from the outside, and on the outside, it's like, oh, they're sleeping. And it almost seemed like to me like he was going to like walk away. It's like, I'm disturbing them. But then I think he kind of started thinking a little bit more like, no, it's not that. It's something more here. And then he kind of figured they're on drugs. So he breaks in the same doorway he made, essentially. Something there, but I can't quite put it into words. He sees the drugs there and tries to wake up Jesse. And I think this is a bad idea in general to do, because here's the lady that threatened your life, and she kind of sees you broke in and everything. Like, things are going to kind of get messy with this because she could throw you. But I guess this is that important to him. And then he's trying to wake up Jesse. And then we see Jane, and Jane's struggling, and she starts coughing up some vomit. And Walt first is like, are you all right? What's like, he seems like he wants to help. And then he just kind of lets it happen. And eventually, she, I assume, dies. We don't know that to be the case at this point. I think we can assume she died. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jane died.
She stops breathing and her eyes open.
Yeah. Okay. So she dies, and Walt, he gets very. The emotions going through Walt right there gotta be so confusing, because he killed part of Jesse's family, you could say, in a way. He feels bad for murdering somebody. He still has that emotion there. Like it almost seems like the Walt we see right now is like the family man Walt with a bunch of stuff thrown on top. And you still have that heart underneath that's getting crushed slowly. And he experiences grief, sadness for Jesse, sadness for himself, what he had to do, like the means he went to here, but also he feels relieved at the end. Like it's what's like, that's off me now, because Jane held this giant weight over him, and I think Jane hung her own noose right here. And we can get into this discussion because I feel like we're gonna have a disagreement here, but I don't know. Number one, I can't say that Walt murdered Jane at all.
No, you did say that.
Okay. How so?
Because you used those words.
Okay.
You said Walt feels bad for murdering someone, is what you said.
True. Okay. But Jane was going to die here. So there's one aspect where Jane was going to die if Walt wasn't there. So Walt had the ability to save her life. I don't think
Is that true?
What do you mean?
Why do you think that's a certainty?
That Walt could have saved her life?
No, that she was going to die no matter what.
Because if he hadn't broken it in, the same thing would have played out. And
why? So she was on her side, cuddling Jesse, until Walt shook Jesse. And then when he shook him, she was shaken off of him onto her back.
Okay. So this changes the plot perspective, because that was a detail I didn't catch.
Things. I mean, it goes back to like the Matrix, right? Like, if I didn't would things have happened the way they happened if certain things didn't happen? You know, like maybe she would have rolled onto her back anyway. We don't know, but the facts say, at least from what we've seen, the impetus of her moving was Walt's actions.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a causal factor, and I think a good factor to bring up. As far as culpability goes, like I can't say it's a little bit strenuous to say that resulted in her death, because I think it was the ultimate cause was the heroin, right, and the overdose. That could have happened anyway. She could have just rolled over on her side, but I think plot wise and everything that happened, we can say that Walt is definitely culpable for her death, because he set those situations in motion in some sort of way, like in some real sort of ways, right? But he also didn't take action to resolve anything. Mm-hmm. I still think Jane would have died there anyway, because I think that this would have happened at some point. But that's not what the episode's trying to say. That's taking to a realistic point of view. I think you're right. So he set the motions in, and he didn't save her. And I think his actions there make complete sense. I think they're completely irrational. And I think Jane set up that situation because she didn't close the book. She kept it open. There's no reason why Jane wouldn't just ask for all the money at this point. Mm-hmm. I want your kind of general take here, because I could go off on a tangent.
I mean, this is Pepin Reacts.
I know.
We're here for your tangents.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is I need some space to think.
I mean, so Walt goes back in. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what his reasoning for breaking in was. Like, what was his intention of what he was going to do? I'm genuinely not sure what was his thought. He was going to break in, and Jesse was just going to be sleeping deeply, and he was going to wake him up and have a very casual conversation,
Hmm.
or Jesse was going to be on drugs and he was going to wake him up, and I don't understand what the ends were here in Walt's minds when he broke in. But regardless of that, shakes Jesse, Jane rolls over, Walt runs around the second he sees it, and he says, no, 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 no. And he runs over. His first instinct is to help, is to save her in this regard. And he leans down, and when he almost gets there, that's when he stops, and you can see everything, all of the math going off in his brain of she's a threat, but she's also a human being. I don't want to watch somebody die. Jesse, she's I've met this person, but she's very much a threat to me and my family. He's thinking about his own family. He's thinking about himself. He's thinking about saving Jesse. If she dies, maybe that gets him off drugs. And through all of this, I personally believe he was paralyzed by choice. And it wasn't until the very last couple of seconds he could have saved her that he had made his decision. Maybe he had 2 or 3, well, let's say 5 seconds that he could have saved her and actively made the choice not to. I think the rest was him doing math in his head about whether it was the right thing to do or not.
Yeah.
I think he's still conflicted about it at the end when he's crying about it.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the right thing to do, let her die.
Yeah. Maybe I interpreted that little ending emotion as being a resolution, but maybe it's just another emotion being communicated. I mean, I think it was a resolution to his emotion there, right? That little bit of relief, because now that she's dead, he does feel relieved in some ways. But I think all the other stuff, I think you're right, it still exists there. I don't think it resolved anything besides the whole, what is it, the Damocles sword over him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the only thing that resolved there is just the threat of Jane being there.
Well, she was the female elephant calling the shots in the room, She was the elephant in the room in his house, in his mind, keeping him out in the living room when his family was cuddling in bed. And this resolved that for him. So yeah, I'm sure relief was one of the things, but I think that was an impossible amount of emotions and thoughts all happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
That were running through him.
And so, see, I think the way I approached it was a bit more like what was being calculative there, but yeah, it's an impossible situation. And it's maybe, I think you're reading, I'm still trying to decide this because I'm trying to decide if Walt decided this or if the circumstance decided it. And if it's the circumstance deciding it, then that's super interesting how it interplays with Walt as a character, because Walt is opposed to circumstance deciding his fate. And if this is what happened here, then that's really tragic for him. That's extremely like
I think it's the kind of the reverse of what Jane did with her dad. Manipulating the situation. She did it through strong arm tactics and like forcibly doing things, and Walt did it through inaction, through doing nothing.
Yeah. Now, the rebirth. This is Phoenix here. Do you think there's any sort of rebirth for Walt in this? I think there was, right? The rebirth was his family man. The rebirth for Jane was her going into, like, I don't know, let's just call her a sociopath here, because I think she was acting very sociopathic in this episode. I think that's not her person generally, but the way she was manipulating people and disregarding their emotions, I think was very, like, I don't know, non-empathetic, you could put it bluntly. And which I do want to get back to Jane's inner character. But also, Jesse was reborn as a baby. Like, I don't know, this naive child that's just kind of going along with things. And you can say their family was reborn in some ways too. Like a lot of different kind of rebirths, and they're all hard to call like say, maybe rebirth isn't the thing. Maybe the Phoenix is more apt, because from the ashes, something comes anew. And there's a lot of like stuff going down these last couple episodes, and that's kind of more, it's maybe not a rebirth, but a revival.
Yeah, I mean a match was struck at the end of the last episode, and this whole episode was watching it all burn and seeing what comes out of the ashes. And there's, I believe, one more episode in the season.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the rebirth. Maybe that's the new Phoenix coming from the ashes.
So I want to touch on Jane as a character here, because Jane got really complex for a moment, because she definitely went down this, like, say, sociopathic kind of realm of just manipulating to get the money. But what really kind of was interesting is when they got the money, what did you say to Jesse? She said, "We're going to get clean."
Yeah.
What the? That is.
We're not going to shoot this into our arm. Was like the first thing she said, which is like such a weird thing to say.
It makes complete sense, though.
If you have to say it, like maybe you don't. Maybe it's not what you really mean.
Well, what is this? Because that ties in with Walt somehow. I'm trying to get the connection. My brain's running a little bit on empty. But there's a connection there, because what she wants is not what she actually is pursuing. Or,
well, I think she is trying to say, like, we don't need people to tell us what to do. We can do the right thing for ourselves. And she knows the right thing is still what her dad wants, right? Her to get clean. And you know that Walt is the one who said, we're going to shoot all of this in, if I give you this money, you're going to overdose and die. And she's like, we're not going to do that.
yeah.
So maybe that's what she's doing. She's refuting all of the people that she's trying to like overcome with this money in the first place. She's saying everyone's wrong about us. Yeah. We're going to do amazing things.
Yeah, I think she also believes that too. I think she does actually think that. And I think she thinks that her drug use is there because of the problems. And if she had money, she could escape her problems, and then they wouldn't be problems.
I think they want to believe that. And that is a very subtle difference.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm drawing an illusion here with people who win the lottery or people who gain extreme success. Like, they think that their life's going to be changed in some sort of big, meaningful way. And in superficial ways, it definitely is. Some people would actually do, change in so a lot of ways. But a lot of times they destroy themselves in the process, or they achieve what they wanted. And then at the end, they're like, I still feel dead inside. I still feel empty. There's a vacuum here. And I think Jane thought that was going to fulfill her needs, but the first thing she does is just go for the heroin. The money wasn't the problem. Her issues.
I mean, it was words right until the second they saw the drugs. Like, it immediately, everything evaporated. Like, and I think the second they saw the drugs, they both knew what they were saying was bullshit.
I think little minor thing here. I think they knew it was bullshit when they were saying it. I think Jane wanted to believe in that, right? But it's kind of like you talk yourself up, like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do it. And then this kind of happens. Like, I've had that experience before. Like, yep. And so I think then they all knew it was bullshit, but it's like, let's just flush it down. It's completely relatable in a weird, fucked up way. Not with heroin, though. Thank God.
Fair. Yeah. So, I mean, this leaves a lot for the future. So it'll be really interesting to see this last episode. I know this has been a very long breakdown, but this episode was incredible. And to think you stopped like a few episodes ago, you stopped watching,
Honestly, like, my fear for the show when I stopped back in the day, it wasn't true, it seems, so far. I mean, I assume there's going to be a lot of sad moments and everything, but it's like, I think the show is just super complex, and I think there's only one episode I talked about with the kid. That's the only one that was like super depressing. Just like, you just want to like cry and just not do anything for a couple of days after. All these other episodes, I think they've been kind of like more towards how the show has been. And I think maybe I just got a bad taste in my mouth. Not that episode was bad at all, the one I stopped watching it. But I think maybe it wasn't representative of what I thought the rest of the show was going to be like that. Like, oh no, this is going to be the rest of the show. And I'm just going to, fall off the face of the earth now. But that hasn't been the case. It's actually been very accelerating.
No, definitely. I think they do a good job of pacing things and not overloading any one emotion. Kind of letting the entire gambit be run throughout the course of seasons, episodes, seasons, series.
Yeah. So I wonder if the next episode's going to be so much jazz, or is this going to just be like, hey, explosion, fire, brimstone? Definitely going to be a setup for season 3. I know that much. So I think definitely this is where stuff's going to happen. And unlike the season 1 finale, I don't think it's going to be a subtle shift. I mean, you could say season 1 was a big shift with the finale, but I think season 2 is going to be like a more explosion than it is like a slight change or in some sort of ways. So, hey, if you guys like the reaction, you should leave a like on this video. Don't leave a dislike because that's not a thing anymore. I'm sorry. If you want to support me in my endeavors, Patreon somewhere in the description. If I want to include it, maybe I won't. I mean, if you're not gonna like search for it for a couple hours, do you really want to support me? Let's just ask that question there. Now, I think we should plug our channel, which is a podcast, right, Meader? Right?
Yeah.
It's called We Need to Talk. It's a show where me and Meader talk about things, love, life, pursuit, happiness, or anything in between. Meader, where can we be found?
Facebook.com/We Need to Talk Show. Twitter at WNTT1, the number 1, or whatever podcast player you choose to use. Look for We Need to Talk, and we are the orange background with our heads as microphones.
Mm-hmm. And we're probably going to be doing a big season finale sort of reaction, sort of. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's see, like a season recap for season 2. We actually might do that live. I'm not sure how we're going to do this exactly. I'm still trying to figure out like a thing to do this. But whatever we do, like Meader, you have to shield me. Just shield.
Okay, I can do that.
But hey, until next time, you guys definitely have a great rest of your day. I react, you react, we react, because there is a dog in the sky. Thank you.